We had an off week in between content, in between our summer series, so we decided to do our next installment of our Actors Hall of Fame episode. I'm here once again with Dustin, the Duster Mason. We are here to go over, Dustin, who are we doing for the month of May?
We're doing Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck.
I knew that joke was going to be there. All of that and more on today's episode.
Get it out of the way. Yeah.
Exactly. On today's episode of the Talkin TV podcast. All right, Dustin, we're here for another Actors Hall of Fame, which
episode 2.
Episode 2, officially the new monthly bonus series of the Talkin TV podcast. Like I said, we've had a couple of like different recap series over the years. You know, Chris and I did Harry Potter, Halloween, and Fast and Furious franchise. We did first time watches for all of those. Then Professor Pat and I did a recap show where we hit all 73 episodes of Game of Thrones. And now my good old friend Dustin, the Duster Mason, and I are going over some of our favorite actors that we've been talking about for years and years, and just going over their movies and like building and compiling a top 10 list that we hope rivals and is, if anything, better than The Big Picture on The Ringer, because Sean and Amanda are just both psychopaths. So
I don't think that's a high bar to clear.
It really isn't. So okay. Dustin, as we did when we started with Joaquin Phoenix last month for the month of April.
Yes. I want to talk about
talk about our boy Ben Affleck.
This is really, I was advocating for this episode because our idea is to cover an actor of elite stature in every month according to movie releases. So last month it was Joaquin Phoenix for Beau is Afraid. Joaquin is pretty undeniably legendary already. This second episode I wanted to do Ben Affleck because he's in Robert Rodriguez's new Hypnotic, which was originally supposed to be a Netflix release, and then Netflix thought it was so bad it dumped it out to a studio that's
Imagine being too bad for Netflix. Imagine being so bad for Netflix.
It looks really awful. And anyway, I know that doesn't sound like a promising start, but Ben Affleck has had a super underrated career, and I've had a really interesting, not going to say relationship isn't the right word, but I haven't been the biggest Ben Affleck fan my whole life. And as a kid, I wasn't a big fan of him, not because I didn't like him in movies. He just seemed kind of douchey, and he was a Red Sox fan. So since I became like maybe 11 or 12, I got past that. And I actually started to get old enough to watch some of his movies and appreciate him more as an actor. And about that time, he was starting to become a director, and I've grown to like all of his movies for the most part. And he's had some ups and downs in his career, but this year we want to talk about his highs.
Yeah,
and he's had plenty of them. He's had a varied career, and I think he's a very underrated performer. He still has 0 Oscar nominations, mind you, and I think once we go through the choices in this list, you're going to understand why he deserves to be in the Actors Hall of Fame, despite not having a nomination.
I couldn't agree with any of those points more, because again, Affleck is a guy where it's like he's always been a part of my life, but I only really started to like enjoy him recently. I feel like it's in a weird way, like the way that you described Affleck is kind of how I felt about Leo DiCaprio when I first like started watching movies to him, where I'm like, I don't get the appeal. He's just a pretty boy. He doesn't really, know how to act well, and then as time went on, I'm like, oh no, now I get it, and that's going to be interesting once we talk about him potentially in a later entry this year. But Affleck, you're going to laugh hysterically when you know this. Do you want to know what the first thing I ever saw Ben Affleck in was?
Was it Daredevil?
No, I still have not seen the Daredevil live action movie.
All right,
no, because it's not a movie. That's the thing.
The Voyage of the Mimi.
Voyage of the Mimi, which we watched in 5th grade.
We were in the same class.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, we were.
Voyage of the Mimi.
Yes, that is the first thing that I ever remember seeing Affleck in, and like, so in my mind, I'm just like, okay, he's just a kid actor. And then when I would start hearing his name. I don't remember when the first time I heard his name was, but when I heard that, I'm like, subconsciously, I was like, oh, the Voyage of the Mimi guy. But like, as I've watched more movies, I will definitely say that, like, again, he has had a very, to say he has had a varied career, I think would not be doing it justice, because again, he has literally gone from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows and then bounced right back. And now I feel like he's like hit a perfect point of not stagnation, but like just even keelness, with his production company that he started with Matt Damon, and this new movie that came out was set to essentially be like another sort of streaming like just advertisement for when it was going to go to streaming disaster, and it's been doing pretty surprisingly well this last month, and that's Air, his fifth feature film, which again, there was a lot of rumors up in the air. Again, one of the highlights of his career is his directing abilities. And I think with the exception of one, he's done pretty good, despite a Best Picture win, which is still, I mean, not confusing, but it's like of all the choice, that's kind of that
in a great year too.
That kind of began the 2010s Best Picture tradition of being like, this is the choice. Like, it's like, and Argo's
the King's Speech. And
Argo, by contrast, again, the 2 years that came before that was an improvement over King's Speech and The Artist.
I was just going to say that is a better movie than at least The Artist. I actually love the King's Speech.
King's Speech is a good movie, but it's the weakest of the 10. It's the weakest of the 10.
I wouldn't say it's the weakest of those nominees that year, but it didn't deserve it over The Social Network.
That's
Absolutely
always the biggest source. That year was just like, again, just Battle of the Executives, and Harvey Weinstein won out.
But yeah, hot take. King's Speech is a great movie, kind of.
I don't think that's a hot take. That's the thing. I've talked to a lot of people who love that movie.
No, but people really, because I've met
everybody that I've talked to enjoys that movie. At the very least,
I've met none of those people. I've met two of them, my grandma and my aunt, and one of them died. Okay, so the King's Speech is good. Argo, I just want to go through some of these movies before we get into our list because he has such a weird career.
He has such a weird career again because you got the 90s, which is the big bounce. Then the 2000s, early 2000s kind of slips. You have like a mid 2000s somewhat resurgence. Then late 2000s, that's when his directing career kicks off, and that's when it like really hits a high. That goes all the way through Gone Girl, and then peaks with Batman vs Superman, and then it tanks after that with all the DC Snyder mess and everything. That goes that way. But
the thing that's interesting about Ben Affleck is that he was like started out like in Dazed and Confused and Mallrats. He was getting and School Ties. Like he was getting typecast as the bully, as like the big tough, like confident asshole. But like Kevin Smith saw through that, and he gave him a career, and then he just kept going into action movies and like an Armageddon, and then he did Surviving Christmas with James Gandolfini.
Confused about Reindeer Games. It's just what the choice there is.
Oh, we'll get to Reindeer Games.
We'll get to Reindeer Games.
Geely is another one. People say that's his worst movie, but Surviving Christmas is pretty,
I've never even heard of Surviving Christmas. Yeah,
with him and James Gandolfini.
Never heard of it. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, I've never heard of it.
A Bomb So Bad You Don't Even Know.
Yeah. What year did it come out?
Like 2004, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was right there. I was like, can we just go over Ben Affleck's 2003 for a second? I'm sorry, but he does Daredevil, Jiggly, and Paycheck, the infamous movie that has inspired so many just inner jokes about him, and it's like, wow, what a year to say the least.
Another hot take. I like him as Daredevil more than I liked him as Batman.
That's also, I don't think, a hot take either. Like, I'm
don't
know.
Glad you agree with me then.
Yeah, only because, like, again, like it's always weird when I talk to people who are a fan of him as Batman, because I'm like, you just look at him, and outside of Batman versus Superman, which is the only one of those movies that, regardless of what you think of his performance, you could tell he's like really committed to. Like really
I
committed
disagree.
To. But
I mean, I think he's good in the
are you talking the Snyder cut, or
I think he's good in. I think he's good in the Snyder cut. I don't think he's good in Batman, and I think that's because of the material. But like, I don't think he's good in that. No.
Okay.
And he's terrible in Justice League.
Well, that's the thing, because obviously coinciding. But that's the thing. So coinciding with his real life status, obviously, he's in and out of rehab. He's back in and out of alcoholism. But the point is that, like, now that we're like kind of on the far side, he's essentially like removed from the DC equation. After everything that happened there, he is now officially, seemingly back. Like I said, he's resumed his directing career, which again was kind of one of the things that allowed for his resurgence in the first place. I would, again, while Affleck has not been my favorite of the actor turned directors, he still is definitely one of the more consistent ones for sure. Even withstanding Live by Night, which is not a bad movie. It's just weaker compared to his first three, But then he has this movie Air that comes out. And again, the biggest thing, in addition to like just him directing, is like it's a return to like old school like movies that we would watch in the theaters and love. It's a mid-budget, mostly just adults talking in rooms. It's got a big movie star cast, and it's got a premise that, while not like completely wildly captivating, is still like interesting in a weird way, you know? And it's
Mhm.
kind of what's nice about it is that it's kind of both based out of like their individual passions. Like they're making this movie kind of for them. They're not making it for anybody else. And in a weird way, that I feel like that's kind of like what's needed now in terms of like the type of movies that we get, where we have so many movies that are just trying to hit before quadrant and hit everything all at once, that now,
Mhm.
like, whenever you get a movie that like you could just tell because the two people invested in making it were clearly interested in the subject matter, that really makes for a different kind of experience altogether. And I feel that is one that we've been getting.
Well, that's funny you're talking about Air, Dominic,
Yeah. So
because
are we kicking it off?
that's my number 10.
Hey, oh, that's a segue right there. If we ever saw one,
Yeah.
if we ever saw one,
Uh,
that's pretty good.
yeah, I liked Air. It's a solid fucking picture,
Yes.
people. It's a good adult entertainment picture. Has a great cast. Great cast. And
Yes.
I do enjoy it a little bit more than Argo. I
Oh,
definitely
for
do.
me,
I,
this is his number 3 behind
uh,
well, the number 2 for me for the Behind the Town.
yeah, well, to me, this is it goes The Town, Gone Baby Gone, Air, Argo, Live by Night, which is a kind of a goofy movie, but it is well made in certain aspects, and I do appreciate some of that film. But yeah, Air is a solid picture, people, and Ben Affleck's performance itself. This comes right ahead of his my honorable mentions, The Last Duel and The Tender Bar, and even Days of Confused. Three great supporting performances from his career that show a softer, devilish, and douchey side of him. But in Air, he plays Phil Knight, the CEO or owner of Nike, and he's really entertaining in this. And even though his character kind of has a non-arc, and he could have done what he was trying to do the whole movie. You know what I mean? But at the end, he finally does that decision. He had the money the whole time, okay, people. Uh, but yeah, I definitely really enjoyed his camaraderie with Matt Damon, and Jason Bateman was really good in this movie too. Yeah, I really enjoyed Air, and even though the soundtrack is like goofy and kind of uninspired and really random and just kind of typical for a movie like this, I still had a really good time. And Ben Affleck's performance was a big part of it because he had a lot of energy and charisma like he usually does.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And we will be getting to that once I get to it on my list. Starting off at my number 10. So I think this is continuing a tradition of a choice that I did not necessarily want to put on here, but kind of ended up here because I've realized what my lack of options were, because I was looking over my list and I'm like, okay, I can't put that on there. It's not enough screen time. I'm like, okay, can't put that on there. Can't put that on there. Can't put that on there. So I eventually kind of came to default. So that while my default choice that I called it for my Walking Phoenix top 10 was Joker, my default choice for Ben Affleck is 2016's The Accountant, which is a movie that in the 6 years since I've seen it, this movie predates my Letterboxd. I still don't really have any sort of concise feelings on it. There are parts of this movie that are great. There are parts of this movie where I'm just utterly confused as far as what's going on, as far as like understanding the characterization of certain of the choices involving what actually happens in the movie. But I will say Ben Affleck is consistent in this. It's in a weird way. I think it plays to his strengths because he gets to be like more silent, more methodical, which is like a side that I feel like he does not get to express often, because again, so much of the time he's being cast as like, I feel like a chatterbox loudmouth in a weird way. I think that's the kind of like why people relate to his Batman in a way that I just thought just made that character just come off as like really stiff and impersonable. But I think it works here, you know, like kind of this is like at his prime, like Batman physique. So he is like bulked the fuck out for this. And it kind of works in this weird, twisty combined performance of like he's one half like a child because of his disorder, but on one half like this lethal assassin who could like take down like an entire room of people. You know, the problem with this movie is not Affleck. The problem I think is in the way that it's edited and in the way that the story is told. Of all the Gavin O'Connor movies that I've seen over the last couple of years, this is one that I can't say I'm a big fan of, but I think Affleck in this is incredible to say the least. This, like I said, Gavin O'Connor, another guy that just knows how to work with Affleck really well.
Great actor, director, that Gavin O'Connor. Number 9 for me is Reindeer Games.
Yeah, I got to ask you about this one because I remember us shitting on this movie a lot.
Here's the thing: the movie itself is a half-assed Tarantino knockoff that features such a random cast with Charlize Theron, Gary Sinise, Donald Logue, Clarence Williams III,
Danny Trejo,
Danny,
Farina.
Dennis Farina is awesome in it.
Dennis Farina is awesome in that.
And Ben Affleck plays this guy who just gets out of jail and pretends to be this criminal in order to bang Charlize Theron. I mean, relatable, right? But he gets himself like entangled in this big heist at a casino during Christmas. But all Ben Affleck wants to do is go home and eat some pecan fucking pie. And I think Ben Affleck is absolutely charming as fuck in this movie. All the moments he makes this movie not boring. If this was like a shitty like lead actor with like no charisma, like if Liam Hemsworth was in a movie like this, no one would care.
Liam Hemsworth is just going to become the default for like just who people go to for like random recasts. He's officially earned that position.
I know, and he's so boring and bland and like mediocre at best. But like Ben Affleck actually makes you care, and you're on his side the whole time. And he's hilarious in it, intermittently, but still really funny. And he has great timing. He has good chemistry with everyone, and he just gets the material, even if the director himself didn't understand the material. I had a really good time with this, and I think it's one of his more charming leading man, movie star kind of performances that goes under the radar.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me because I'm like, I remember I watched this like,
oh, it's a mess.
If memory serves, I think this is like right in like either the height of COVID. No, I remember now. I watched this at like the height of COVID because I was catching up on like movies that came out in the year 2000, and I just remember watching this movie and you talking about it nonstop. I remember you being like, "Yeah, Ben Affleck is really good at this, but the movie sucks," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll check it out." But I watched it and I'm like, I don't know what to make heads or tails of what's going on. Like he's getting out of jail. He's like they get pursued by this gang. They get kidnapped. Here's one story. Then he sees Charlize banging who's supposed to be her brother, and then it's not, and they're making a plan.
Oh, you're giving it all away.
It's like the point is that like this movie is just so convoluted, just jumping from one thing to another.
You didn't even get to the twist yet.
No, and I'm not going to spoil it for people who actually do end up watching it. But like.
Insane.
It's like I don't get it. I don't get it. Now,
Aaron Kruger wrote it.
Oh, that explains a lot, actually.
Yeah.
The Academy Award nominated writer for Top Gun Maverick people wrote Reindeer Games. Yeah. So talking about smaller parts before, smaller supporting parts. This is one that again I know you and I kind of disagree that this should be on this list, but I think that he's a crucial part of this movie. That's Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. It's like one of his first like big major announcement roles. Like I said, this is really the beginning because I think he's only really got school ties in like a couple movies before this really, but this like transitions him up to the big leagues. This is what gets him, his relationship with Kevin Smith, and obviously him and Damon eventually make Good Will Hunting from this, which leads him on to Armageddon. And like again, one of the biggest peaks that anybody's ever had. And it all kind of started with this one with the performance of Fred O'Banion, the kind of local school bully, school jock. The reason why I have it is because, again, it's like you said, it established the reason for his typecasting. It's like he plays such a good, like, dumb jock asshole, And, like, while, again, it's not necessarily an essential part of the movie, per se. You can cut him out easily and you wouldn't be missing much. It's still part of, like, generating the overall world that Richard Linklater is trying to bring you into. Like, that's what separates, to me, Dazed and Confused from, like, a lot of other, like, coming-of-age stoner movies, is that, like, it really is just about, like, the vibe and the hang of all these people and just following everybody else along, and the fact that so much of it is improvised, it makes it feel so much more real, so much more lived in. And, like, so, like, when Ben Affleck is, like, paddling people, that's something that, like, I think that's so stupid and ridiculous. And then I go to college and I'm like, oh, there are people who have been capable of this before, and like this happens, and like smashing mailboxes for entertainment and just driving around because there's literally nothing to fucking do because it's pre-cell phones, and it's like everybody's just gathering at the park. It just feels like such a more loose free time that obviously has just been debunked by like, wokesters now. But ultimately, and sorry, I realize I'm talking more about the movie than the actual performance here, but yeah, like I think this is crucial and essential in Affleck's Hall of Fame, even if he is the smallest but essential part of it, because it's just like he's part of it because like the whole thing is that like the kids have to like get their rebellion / revenge, and he is unfortunately the victim of that. So that's my number 9, Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, there were some ruffians about. Yeah, Ben Affleck's great in that movie, and he is really funny when he wants to be in movies also. And I think that goes very he's underrated in that department. 8, Good Will Hunting. He's very, 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 very good in this. And he's the only person that really should have played this role, obviously, and he probably wrote it for himself with Matt Damon. uh, obviously, and they won the Oscar for it too, which is
Rightfully
great.
so.
It's a great movie. It's a terrific film.
The
And
only other screenplay that year for original that comes
yeah,
close to that is Paul Thomas Anderson for Boogie Nights, and even then, it's like I get why they went with Good Will Hunting, because the Oscars always likes the more slightly more warm, fuzzy, accessible story than the really out there one, at least in my experience.
yeah, it's not the most complex performance in the world, but he adds so much heart and humanity and soul to it that it just he just breathed life onto screen. He's just so good in this movie, and especially his like memorable monologue near the end of the movie is just
Yes,
heartbreaking too. So
absolutely.
I love Ben Affleck and Good Will Hunting.
Yes, absolutely. My number 8. This is where we're going to start getting into common territory, because I think that Dustin, you're going to find that when it comes to making our combined list, it's going to be a lot easier to do Affleck than it will be to do Joaquin. Because my number 8 is Air, which, like you said, just talked about. Like I said, just a recent surprise for me. Like I largely have been the 2022 was a very disappointing track record for movies. Just getting back, and 2023 was kind of no different until I saw this, and I was like, oh, because this is like. I'm like, this is like a nothing watch, like this is something that like in 2020 or 2021, I would have watched this and waited for this to come out and stream it. But I'm like, okay, cool. Like the fact that like a movie star filled cast that's not like effects driven or part of a franchise or a known IP, like I think I'd only watched like the Super Mario Brothers a couple days ago, which was fun, but that's all it was. It was just like kind of fun, entertaining noise. Like there was nothing really deep below the surface. It was just like mostly like I think in a weird way, watching Mario was like the first time I've ever like felt like for people like in their 30s watching 10 years worth of Marvel, where it's like I
Mhm.
get it, it's fun, but like there's something beneath the surface that like was perfect for us because we were like the prime demographic for growing up with those movies, and I think those hit really well. But Air, it's like is a movie that, again, it sounds like such a broken record saying this, but really is like a movie that like would have come out like when I was a kid, like 11, like 8 or 9, and then I would have watched it a few years later in like high school, would have absolutely loved it. Like, like in a weird way, this reminded me a lot vibe wise of Ocean's 11, even though it's a completely different like premise in general. It's more surrounding business, but Affleck, again, a smaller but crucial part of this conversation. And I think the whole thing is that like it's the first time that he's like actually like played a part in a movie since Argo. And while Argo, I just found it to be kind of underwhelming. The town, I feel like is one where it's like, yeah, he had like real charm and real presence with that, But this one, it's like he's not the lead character. He made Damon the lead character, but in a weird way, I think it works better. It benefits his character. He's kind of like one of those guys that like his presence looms large over the rest of the movie, even though what's it called? Even though like he's not the main character, like he's got like his fun, goofy moments, like you have the nice moment in the basement where it's like all the main characters are sitting together, they're like discussing the pitch meeting for Michael Jordan the next day, and Affleck's like part in that. It's like I'm like, yeah, this is old school. This is like what movies are, what movies used to be, So that's definitely why Air it had to make the list, by default.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, I just want to say, Argo. The reason I'm not crazy about Argo, besides the third act, is because Ben Affleck cast himself as a Mexican American when Michael Pena was right
Right
there.
there. Like, and
You know what I mean?
yeah, he again, yeah.
That would have blew his career up
Yes,
too.
it would have been
Whatever.
completely different, and Pena, I think, would have had like the dramatic turnaround that a lot of actors have
Maybe
had.
could have gotten a nomination for that too.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah. But so here's the
Whatever.
question though: Is it? And this is something that I've always wanted to ask you: Is it more that he cast himself as a Mexican American, or that it wasn't Michael Pena? Because it's not like they're not even keeled. At least I know.
Well, it would have been more accurate to the real life story, and
Absolutely.
and Michael Pena's not white. No, it's the Ben Affleck being a Mexican thing that's weird to me.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me. But
Yeah.
number 7 is Dogma.
Yes.
I think Ben Affleck,
awesome.
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, they teamed up with Kevin Smith to play a couple of
Angels.
fucking yeah, angels.
Yeah.
With quotes because they get cast from heaven, down in like Wisconsin by God for like breaking some rules, let's say, without going into detail. But Matt Damon plays Loki, the best Loki, and
Yes.
Ben Affleck plays Bartleby, and they're both awesome in this. And
Yes.
two of my favorite performances, obviously Affleck, but also for Damon, and they just nail Kevin Smith's like wry, sardonic dialogue. and they just nail it right out of the park. And Ben Affleck, it's like a slow crescendo. He gets crazier as the movie goes, and he finally loses his shit. And I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, maybe he's going a little far. I appreciate it even more so today. I think he's great, and he really gets the dialogue. It's just everyone in this movie is amazing except Linda Fiorentino, and she's the main character.
Yeah, she's kind of flat and boring.
So if Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were more so the main characters, I would absolutely adore this movie. But it is very, very good. It is one of Kevin Smith's best movies.
I agree.
It's an underrated Affleck performance.
Well, I agree because, well, I mean, we're not going to stop this conversation yet because my number 7 is also Dogma. I just realized that we had this in the same spot. So I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Not only do we have like 8 of the same choices on this list, but we also have Dogma as number 7. Yeah, this movie's fucking great. I think this is, I go back and forth all the time. Clerks is objectively his best, but I think this is my personal, I always have like sometimes like my personal favorite differentiates from like what objectively a director's best work is. And for me, that's Dogma. Like this is, I believe this is the first Kevin Smith movie that I ever watched, and I loved every single minute of it. I'm like, this movie was just a spectacular, stupendous blast from start to finish. It has the best of Jay and Silent Bob. It's got, in my opinion, the best cast that he's ever worked with, like Chris Rock, Affleck, Damon, Salma Hayek, Alan Rickman, and just a random show up. George Carlin has one of a couple appearances that he made. It has like a tiny appearance in the beginning. You know, it's just like it balances it perfectly. It's so hilarious to me that this movie came out 2 years after Devil's Advocate and made Devil's Advocate look like a comedy in comparison with like how well it treated its treatment of like religious subject matter in a strange way, which is to like not take it religious like seriously at all. And Kevin Smith just understands that in a way that so few other people do, and he's able to translate that. Like I can only imagine what it must have been like being Kevin Smith, Matt Damon, and Ben Affleck in the late 90s to be like the age that we are now and making the shit that they were making back then. You know, it really makes you consider like the fact that like they were just at the perfect point in their lives where they could make just some fucking awesome shit like this, because goddamn is our Affleck. This is like, to me, it's not Good Will Hunting. It's this movie to me that solidifies their pairing specifically because of just how good they are as these two. And Affleck, you're right. And like the twists and turns that their characters take, like Affleck kind of like, you know, they have like a good dynamic, and as they like splinter further and further apart as time goes on, until by the end it's like, wow, like Loki is just drunk off his mind, and Bartleby is ready to like rain like fiery hell down on people. You know, the irony being that he's actually now doing, you know, like Satan's work in a weird way, and Jason Lee is Satan, which is like also spectacular. This movie. No,
Jason Lee is Azrael.
Azrael, that's right, not Satan, but yeah.
You're right. This does have the best Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah, easily. I don't.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like Jay and Silent Bob. They just become overused to a certain extent, and like,
no, the way they're utilized in this movie is very unique.
Yes, agree.
I really like how they did that.
Yeah, you know, Kevin Smith established, one of the guys that established early, of like, you know, dropping you know, the certain sets of characters into different of his movies, and Jay and Silent Bob showed up for what, 6 movies straight, pretty much. You know, until Clerks 2 was like their last. I mean, there was a gap obviously between Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Clerks 2, but still, you know, at least as part of the Viewers universe per se. So moving on, your number 6.
My number 6 is The Accountant, because I think this is a really underrated Affleck performance, also because of the attention he didn't get for it. Because, like, I think this is a really underrated movie in general, and I think it's incredibly well made. It has an awesome fucking supporting performance from John Bernthal.
He's insane in that movie.
He's, like, absolutely phenomenal. I still think that's probably his best film performance, John Bernthal. I really think so. He's fucking steals every scene in this. But Ben Affleck doesn't get enough credit for playing a good, like, autistic character in this. I really don't. Yeah. I think he really nails it.
Because, like, and autistic performances, I feel like, are not ones that are like often talked about, is the thing. But like when they nail them, oh my god, they nailed them. Like people. I still talk about that. I think DiCaprio's like secret best performance is What's Eating Gilbert Grape, just because of like just how much he is like nailing those mannerisms. You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I definitely don't think this is a bad performance at all. Obviously. I think he really is convincing as a badass. Like you said, he was in the shape for it. He was in Batman shape, and he has good chemistry with Anna Kendrick too, and has a good cast, and it's just really well made. And like I really like that performance.
Is it just the Anna Kendrick thing, or did their dynamic kind of remind you almost of Up in the Air? Because I especially after watching Up in the Air, okay, that might just be a me thing. Not in terms of like the actor specifically, but just because of like, again, just like her nature and like the nature of their relationship, where, you know, like, because I forget, did they end up sleeping together in that movie? I completely forgot. They didn't,
What,
right?
in Up in the Air?
No. Sorry, in The Accountant, did Affleck and Anna Kendrick end up? I don't remember. That's the thing. That's the only thing I don't remember.
Yeah, they do in
They
The
do?
Accountant, but they don't. George Clooney doesn't fuck Anna Kendrick in Up in the
I'm sorry.
Air.
I meant I was talking about in The Accountant, like the whole like. I'm realizing now that the dynamics are not similar, you know, as far as like the whole mentor-mentee thing, but that's not at all the case in The Accountant. Like I couldn't remember that. That's the thing. That was the only thing I couldn't remember. I really remember like Jeffrey Tambor getting like tortured in this movie, but which is
he was good in this too. It was John Lithgow.
No. Jeffrey Tambor was his mentor, and when he got out of jail, the mob was alerted, and he was tortured and eventually killed, which is what caused Affleck to go on the rampage. But Lithgow was the bad guy in this.
Yeah. Yeah, Lithgow was really good in that.
Yeah.
I really like Lithgow.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons was good in that.
Everybody's good in the movie. It's not a single person that's bad in it, you know?
Yeah. All right. What's your next pick?
Well, yeah, sorry. I kind of went on a weird tangent there. My number 6, Armageddon. Loki. Oh, man. I love this movie so much. This is the ultimate Baypex, right? I think Affleck might be the best.
Performances, though.
I think Affleck might be the best actor in this movie, which is crazy when you consider that, like, again, Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Willis and Liv Tyler at, like, the peak of their powers.
Bruce Willis.
I love Bruce Willis in the movie. I do, but like, I don't know, man. There was something about like Affleck being like kind of the underdog and him like having to like earn back Bruce Willis's trust. And then at the end, when he's like, you know, giving his like, yeah, it's like, you know, you're the guy now. And he's like screaming and crying his heart out. Like, it's ridiculous soap opera.
Okay.
But given the setting and given just how hard he leads into it, like this is, I think, the most Affleck that I've ever seen Affleck. Like, this is everything you love about a Ben Affleck performance. He is a smart ass, but he is also yelling like every 3 seconds, but he's like energetic and alive, you know, and he's also like kind of still in like the dumb kid phase. And keep in mind too, this is a different kind of a role that he's casted, because like so many of the movies that he was in up until this point, he was pretty much like, you know, the smart ass, but here he's like the butt of the joke for the first half, you know, where you're like, this idiot is the guy that's like dating Liv Tyler, you know, and then with the stupid fucking music video scene that looks like it was straight out of an Aerosmith music video. Like, I cannot emphasize enough how much I love this movie and how much I love Michael Bay. But like the thing about being a Michael Bay fan is you have to acknowledge all of the stupidity and excess that comes with his movies and comes with his style, because that's what you love about it, because that's what makes those movies so different and unique. Like, I rewatched Armageddon last year. I'm like, it's still great. I still get the same feeling of enjoyment from this as possible, even if it is way too much. And Affleck is such a crucial part of that. And like I said, this is even though the 5 performances that I have above this are better objectively, this is still the most fun that I ever have watching Affleck on screen. And he just, again, chews on each bit of scenery like crazy. I still love the line where he's like, "You ever heard of Evel Knievel?" And Peter Stormare was like, "No, I never watched Star Wars." Like, that's a terrible joke, but I don't know, man. I'm a Michael Bay fan. Armageddon 6. And I think it's a crucial part of his filmography too.
Sure, but I wouldn't put that in his best performances for his body of work. But I get your point. I at first I thought you said he's the best actor in that movie.
Oh no, I might be stand behind that point as well.
But you said, all right, that you're just trolling at this point.
That is my one troll choice.
I thought you were saying like he was the best. He gave the best performance in the movie. Like afterwards, but now I think I was right. You were saying you think he's the best actor in that movie over Bruce Willis, Billy Bob Thornton,
we're just saying about
Steve Buscemi,
the performance
Owen
in hindsight.
Wilson.
Yeah, what you're saying about the performance in hindsight, yeah, that makes more sense with what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's fine to say, yeah, you enjoyed him the most in that movie, but he's not a better overall actor than Bruce Willis or Steve Buscemi or Billy Bob Thornton.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Get out of here.
He's the one that's got the most amount of range and most amount of territory to cover. I don't know. You and I have never actually talked. You and I have never actually talked about Armageddon. I realized that.
It's not even the performance that I'm even bothered by. You're just saying overall that he's a better actor than Bruce Willis, Steve Buscemi, fucking.
No. Oh, no. I meant in the movie, not overall as an actor.
No, I thought that's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah.
Like that that he's like a better overall actor than those people.
No.
Or he gave your favorite performance.
He gave my favorite performance in the movie.
All right, that's what I thought.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I thought you were saying
Yeah.
at
Yeah, that's
first.
what I'm saying. He's not a
Okay.
better actor than Willis or Buscemi. No
Okay.
shot.
I thought you were double downing on
No.
that. Okay, number
No.
5, sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
No, number 5 is Boiler Room.
Yes, so this is
Uh,
one that I've never actually seen this movie,
mhm.
so fill me in on this.
Boiler Room is a Ben Younger directed film. He directed Bleed for this with Miles Teller, another underrated, underseen movie. But this stars Giovanni Ribisi, Vin Diesel, Nia Long, Scott Kahn, Jamie Kennedy, uh, Tom Everett Scott, and Nikki Cat. No one cares. But it's a, kind of like a Wall Street Junior kind of movie. It's about this like college dropout played by Giovanni Ribisi. He's like a hustler. He runs this, pretty much his own casino out of his house to all these college students on break coming in back and forth and like running the house and everything. But then he shuts that down and starts to get into trading. And Ben Affleck plays pretty much the Alec Baldwin and Glengarry Glen Ross in this movie. Comes in for a couple of scenes and just absolutely steals it. Look up his speeches if you don't want to watch the movie, but those scenes are all fucking awesome. And Ben Affleck kills it. Just absolutely kills it. And it's probably the most razor sharp he's ever been in anything.
When you say like the Alec Baldwin, like, because Alec Baldwin, the thing that's cool about Glengarry Glen Ross is, first of all, the Alec Baldwin part is not part of the original stage play. It's original to the movie, which is awesome. And he's only in one scene in the movie. I always thought that because of how epic that speech was, I'm like, he's got to be in multiple scenes. Like, he comes back. I'm like, no, it's just that scene. That's the only scene that he's in.
No, I'm aware.
Yeah,
I've seen the movie plenty of times.
No,
I know.
Ben
Affleck's in the movie a couple of scenes,
okay,
is what I'm saying, and he comes in like the Alec Baldwin does in Glengarry Glen Ross, and just does those crazy speeches.
Got it. So he's got multiple speeches, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like 2.
Okay, still
like
2.
1 or 2, yeah.
That's better than 1 for sure. Yeah, I've never seen it. This was on my list of movies that I wanted to watch back in 2020 for just like movies that return in 20 that I just missed the cut. Unfortunately, I was catching up on some of the bigger ones. Moving on, number 5. Kind of in a weird way, like the movie that does not get the credit that it weirdly deserves, both because of when it came out and because it was like it signified really the beginning of Affleck's comeback that was then continued by The Last Duel and now has been solidified by Air. But his comeback after the disaster of the Snyderverse started with The Way Back, which is a movie, again, him and Gavin O'Connor back together. They're tackling a more like quiet, a more intimate story. Again, a comeback story, if you will, which, as you know, are movies that are usually like a really easy way to get to the heartstrings, relatable, where he plays an alcoholic coach who is, an alcoholic, what is he, like a steel worker, basically, who's like life's going down the drain, who's given a second chance by being able to coach his old Catholic school basketball team. And this movie, again, starts off in a familiar place and takes you in a lot of twists and turns and different directions that you would not expect. And Affleck is consistent as hell throughout all of it and hits what I thought would be like some really difficult, emotional beats that I did not expect him to be able to hit, and hits them very well in this movie. Again, it helps that, again, it's familiar territory for him. It's back in Boston, subject matter I'm sure is one that he like was well aware of, growing up, and that is personal to him. But this movie rules, and I think it's really underrated and really underseen. And it sucks that it kind of came out when it did because COVID kind of overrode it. Because I think this easily could have been like a contender for some Oscars that year for sure.
Yeah, that's my number 4. The Way Back.
Look at that. Way Back continuation.
The Way Back is my number 4. I don't think that highly of this movie, but I think he's phenomenal in this movie. He's absolutely crushing. He plays a grieving father, divorced father who becomes an alcoholic. And then he has to coach his old basketball team at a Catholic school. And I'm glad this movie was R, just so it had those scenes where Ben Affleck gets to curse at a bunch of kids. It's really great. And the scenes where he really gets drunk are really like kind of borderline hard to watch because of how authentic they come across. And he's really fucking good in it. I think the movie itself is a little typical, really predictable, and isn't that dynamic of a sports movie. It's pretty run of the mill, but Ben Affleck is the reason why you turn into TNT to watch this.
Yes, I agree with all of those 100%. Moving on, my number 4. Gone Girl. This might seem a little low on the list compared to just where it is, but like this is the one where it's like, yes, the comeback is complete. He's working with Fincher. You know, Fincher is coming right off of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You know, they're adapting Gillian Flynn's novel, and this movie is just, oh my God, this might be the most tense that I've ever been watching anything that Affleck is in. It's just, again, it's Fincher's style. It's how precise and concise he is with everything. The tone and like kind of like almost like ratcheting up of the tension that Fincher performs in this is unlike anything that I've ever seen. And again, this is like the first time where like Affleck, what's it called? You know, he's getting like I feel like this is the first time where people became aware that like, oh, Affleck can give like a different kind of a performance. You know, like The Town is kind of the beginning of that, but Gone Girl, it's like, nah, this is like this is like in a way the first instance where like Fincher is taking things that like people like would know and think about Ben Affleck, you know, and kind of turning them on their head. Where again, he's like kind of like a washed up, you know, not burnout, but like, you know, he's kind of, you know, settled into this lifestyle. He's, you know, hot shit, teaching college literature, you know, dating his high school student, and happens to be married to a psychopath. But what's interesting about their relationship is that like they both have like major flaws about them, and Affleck again carries them in a way that feels both relatable, but also like alienating, if that makes sense. Like I never watch a Fincher movie or a Fincher characterization and I'm like, oh, like I kind of, you know, I can relate to that guy in a sense. Like I do that with other directors and other characters, but like Fincher, I'm like, I like watching these people like from a distance, but I do not want to interact with any single character in a Fincher movie. You know, maybe Herman Mankiewicz and Mank, because he seems fun to be around. But other than that, you know, yeah, like Fincher characters are often alienating, and so Affleck, again, like for to be able to pull that off, once again, shows his range. So
I would like to spend a night with the girl with the dragon tattoo if I get a chance.
Tomato. That's a loaded handgun, if you will.
Rooney Mara.
Well, Rooney Mara, that's a different story. But moving on, you're number 3.
All right, my number 3 is The Town.
Yeah, we have the same top 3, by the way, just in different spots.
The Town is my number 3. I went into this movie when it came out with low expectations because I remember thinking the trailer was really mediocre. But wow, that has to be one of the biggest surprises of my life, The Town, because it's one of the most rewatchable and just instant classic crime movies of its time. Like it really is maybe the best bank robbery movie since Heat. Like it pretty much is. And Ben Affleck's performance, he really anchors the film. It's a very grounded performance, and it's a very intense performance, and also heartbreaking. He knows how to pull at those fucking heartstrings, people.
Yes,
and all of the performances are amazing in it. Jeremy Renner was nominated; he was incredible. Rebecca Hall, John Hamm. That's probably still my favorite film performance of his is John Hamm. Just so many good people. This Chris Cooper is great in his like little scene. What's his name? The guy from Inception, Pete Postlethwaite.
Postlethwaite, yeah.
Yeah, he got a BAFTA nomination for this. Yeah, it's a great cast. Ben Affleck, this is obviously his best directed movie. Just it's his most tense. The Fenway Park scenes are incredible. All of the heist scenes are just insane and instant classic. And yeah, Blake Lively is awesome in this movie too. It's a great movie, and I think he's really great in it. And it's a very underrated performance because it's a little overshadowed the fact that he directed this. So people don't want to admit that he's awesome in it, but he's really like maybe the emotional core of the movie.
Yeah, it's him taking on Heat like a lot of other people have, and really doing justice with it for sure. So that moves us on to my number 3, which is Chasing Amy. Again, just like second time that he works with Kevin Smith after Mallrats, but Smith like writes this movie for him. And what's funny is that like Kevin Smith like kind of used this script to get him for Dogma. If ever, or Mallrats, I forget what Kevin Smith was talking about this on Bill Simmons' podcast a couple months ago, and he talked about this movie, and the whole thing is that like when Affleck talked about this movie with him, he was like, oh yeah, I can play this part in my sleep, like because it's which is strange because again, I feel like that like this comes at the same year as Good Will Hunting, which I think is insane, but also like really fascinating because it's like that those are like the two different aspects of Affleck's persona. Like Good Will Hunting is like the wise ass, smart ass, but like also like, you know, the more like deadly, hard edged Affleck. And this is like the more softer, more intimate Affleck, you know, where he's just like it's a rom-com essentially, but it's a rom-com done by Kevin Smith. So it's gonna be like different and interesting to say the least. And like his characterization here, where again, he's just a guy who wants to fall in love with a girl that just happens to be out of reach for some reason, you know? And despite all the stupid controversy, which okay, like the internet just needs to stop with everything. There's an argument to me. Like I said, there's a reason why this isn't top three. I feel like this top three, at least for what's called. Oh shit! Wait, never mind. I just realized we don't have the same top three because I have one way higher. But the point is that I feel like between this, Gone Girl, and The Town, I feel like you could take each of these easily and like interchange them, at least to me. So that's why Chasing Amy is got to be in the top three easily.
Yeah, and Chasing Amy is my number 2. Love Chasing Amy. It's Kevin Smith's best film. It's his most honest movie, his most subversive film, and it's his most sensitive. I love it, and it's really fucking funny. Ben Affleck plays such a down-to-earth, realistic, sort of frustrating character, but he's also very empathetic and relatable at points. And Jason Lee gives like such a star-making, like just sensational performance in this movie that should have made like he should have had a better agent, that fucking guy, and shouldn't have gotten into Scientology because he was really something else back in the 90s.
Scientology, man, it ruins everyone it touches.
Yeah, he was like, honestly, if Jason Lee had his head on straight a little bit better, like Ben Affleck does, he would have an Actor Hall of Fame episode coming
for sure.
up. That's what I mean. But anyway, he's so good in this movie. Joey Lauren Adams is great. He's really fucking good in this. Like he really nails Kevin Smith's dialogue, maybe better than any other actor besides Jason Lee. And yeah, it's like you. It's just a brilliantly written film. It's one of my all-time favorites, and Affleck just destroys it. It's great fucking performance.
Yeah, like I have a soft spot for any movie that comes out in my year, 1997. So, yes. And this is definitely one of them for sure. All right, moving on. My number 2, Good Will Hunting, easily. I'll admit part of this again just comes from the bias of the fact that he wrote this movie as well. This is like again the first real sense of like he's creatively involved with something. It's not just him playing a role, you know. And so, while again another instance where again he plays second fiddle to Damon, I feel like in a weird way, that's when the two of them are at their best. You know, when Damon is like kind of the more flawed protagonist and Affleck is the guy that's like rooting for him on the side in a weird way. Like it's a really good dynamic. And obviously it's more here when they're like more so like, you know, derelict kids, one of them who happens to be like this secret genius living on the streets in Boston. And then of course, one of them gets the chance to like, you know, go the distance. You know, again, a very relatable story. I still kind of want to see the sequel to this, which was the second half of the script where basically Will gets recruited to the CIA. And they end up like having like stopping the world from you know bringing on aliens. You know, I still want to see that version of the script that William Goldman told them to cut, and rightfully so. But the point being that this movie it's a star-making vehicle essentially for everybody that's involved. You know, not just the two leads, Casey Affleck, Minnie Driver, Cole Hauser, what's it called? Yeah, our boy, who you know the two legacy stars that they get, you know, Stellan Skarsgård and Robin Williams, who obviously wins his Oscar for this. Rest in peace. But yeah, again, Affleck, it's another situation where again, small part but crucial to it as well, and Affleck just nails every minute of it. Where he's like, you know, from the opening with the way they're talking to the girls to again just randomly going and getting in fights with people to playing hockey at the park. And that wasn't even a good Boston accent there. And all the way to the end when he gives the speech, you know.
Yeah.
Great. So again, it's maybe not his best performance overall, but just as far as like again, it being crucial for him, it's my number 2, Good Will Hunting.
All right, and my number 1 is Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher. I think this is probably the best performance by Ben Affleck, just because of the fact that it encompasses everything he's done up until that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it really. Well, he was the perfect choice for this kind of like Scott Peterson sort of like surrogate character. And he has the look because he kind of does look like that guy. And Ben Affleck just knows how to make you feel for kind of a sketchy character. Like to counter what you said before, like I wouldn't mind grabbing a drink with this guy because he's not that awful of a guy. He's just married to a psychopath who's just, you know, death do us part, right? Till death do us part. Like she's crazy, absolutely nuts, trying to frame him the whole time. You know, you should have seen Gone Girl by this point. Spoiler alert. You know, yeah. He's innocent. He's an innocent guy. Yeah, is he a perfect guy? No, but like, you're with him the whole time. And Ben Affleck is hilarious in this. His scenes with Tyler Perry as his lawyer are priceless. and Carrie Coon is his sister. Emily Ratajkowski is his hot, mistress. You know, Ben Affleck is perfect in this. Like his rapport with Rosamund Pike is just sensational. You buy the moments where they're falling in love and when they're falling out of love by the end. And I think it's probably his most complex work. And I think it's his most enjoyable performance to watch. And I think it's his most slept on because he wasn't nominated for it. And he arguably should have.
Yeah, which is insane. And then Rosamund Pike didn't win for it, which is also insane. I don't know. It's weird because the rewatchables unfortunately did a thing where it's like ever since they said that John Hamm was originally supposed to have this part, I'm like, I kind of can't unsee it. And as great as Affleck is in the movie, I'm like, shit, there's a parallel universe where John Hamm has this part and it's almost better, if that makes sense.
No, I don't think so? I feel like it would have been a little smarmier with John Hamm. I feel like
but doesn't the movie already have that smarmy edge going for it? And
it doesn't need an extra layer with John Hamm.
Okay.
And it seems a little like the age gap is kind of weird. I feel like John Hamm is a little older. Yeah, no, it's a little grimier. I feel like Ben Affleck is a little more, it's easier. He's easier to latch onto than John Hamm would.
John Hamm's a year older than Affleck.
Well, he don't look like it.
That's true.
That's crazy. That's news to me.
I just thought about that because John Hamm's not that much older than Affleck, But you're right. It has to do with I feel like the maturity level, And John
really
Hamm
only a year.
71 versus 72. Yeah,
that's hilarious.
That's crazy.
That's funny. Then.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I still think Ben. It's just the going by the actors.
Yeah.
And
again, it was ultimately perfect for
across.
Affleck's career because Affleck said he had never been pushed like this as an actor, but working before Fincher, which is crazy when you think about just the amount of work that he'd had. And my number one, The Town. Like I said, this is mostly it's the best to me that Affleck has been in any movie. Really, I kind of gushed a lot about Armageddon, but this is again, it's just I remember watching this movie and similar to when I watch Heat, I'm like it just starts off like electric and it just keeps you going throughout it. You're just completely locked in and you understand everything where he's at. Of course you're a little bit skeptical, but you're like, really he feels for Rebecca Hall. But he has such a well-oiled knowledge of what he's doing, because the thing is that Gone Baby Gone was kind of showing that okay, I know how to make a movie, but he doesn't cast himself in it. It's the only one of his movies that he hasn't cast himself in. And then this one, he's like, nah, I'm ready. I'm ready to sit back in front of the camera. I'm ready to do the lead. Because like I said, people still weren't sure if he was ready. He directed Gone Baby Gone. He had been in Hollywoodland the year before that. I don't remember what he was in 08 and 09, but 2010, so they're like, this is the comeback. And now I didn't see the trailer. I didn't see this when it came out. I just saw it years later off of I think one of my grandma's Netflix DVDs when we still watched those when I was in high school. And this movie rules from start to finish. It's everything you want from Affleck. He is rough and tumble. He is, he's a tough guy, but he's also he's got a lovable soul, and ultimately at the end of the day, he is just a guy that wants a relatively normal life when, since that is something that he has never been able to have. And those characters are always going to, I'm always going to enjoy watching those characters, those types of characters. And Affleck knew what he was doing here. He officially made his comeback with this. And in hindsight, for me, this is one of the best movies for me from 2010. I think this should have gotten the 10th spot for Best Picture and all of the above. And the fact that it only got it for Renner. It didn't even get it for screenplay, which is particularly insane to me, especially given just again, how tight this movie is from start to finish. It just shows that the Oscars, they don't like action in their movies. That's which is really strange to say. So now that we have entered our individual entries, Dustin, the good thing is that this combined list is going to be a lot easier to do because 8 of our choices we have in common. We have The Town, Good Will Hunting, Chasing Amy, Gone Girl, The Way Back, Dogma, Air, and The Accountant all in common. So those 8 all get in. So that leaves our 4 choices. So I have Dazed and Confused and and Armageddon, and you have for your other 2 choices
Reindeer Games and Boiler Room.
Well, right now I'm going to rule that Reindeer Games is out. I'm going to rule that Reindeer Games is out for sure. So I vote for So how about this? Between the 2, Armageddon or Dazed, which one would you pick of mine?
Dazed.
You would say Dazed. And then we go with Boiler Room for the final entry?
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. So now for the combined list. So this should be an easy one. So number 1, Gone Girl or The Town?
Let's do The Town.
Yeah.
Because it's his, you say, it's his best in front of and behind the camera, which is I'm okay with that because I agree with that. It's his best directed film.
Then Gone Girl at 2?
Yes.
All right.
And then Chasing Amy 3.
Yes, has to be. then can we compromise then and say Good Will Hunting at 4?
Sure.
Okay.
5 would be The Way Back.
Yep.
6 would be Dogma.
Yep.
7.
What does that leave? That leaves Dazed, Accountant, Dazed, Accountant, Dazed, Accountant, Air, and Boiler Room. Dazed, Accountant, Air, and Boiler Room.
All right, so we can do.
I say The Accountant at 7. I'm willing to go up a couple spots. And I know you like that.
Accountant at 7, Air at 8. 9 would be Dazed, 10 Boiler Room.
Yep, I'm with that.
Yep.
And with that, we officially have, people, the second of the Talkin' TV podcast Hall of Fames with Ben Affleck. With number 10, Boiler Room, directed by Ben Younger. Number 9, Dazed and Confused, directed by Richard Linklater. Number 8, Air, also directed by himself. 7, The Accountant, directed by Gavin O'Connor. 6, Dogma, directed by Kevin Smith. 5, The Way Back, directed by Gavin O'Connor. 4, Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant. 3, Chasing Amy, directed by Kevin Smith. 2, Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher. And 1, The Town, directed by himself. So I think that the consensus here is that if Affleck is working with himself creatively in the field, if he's working with Kevin Smith, or if he's working with Gavin O'Connor, we're going to get something good. Even if the last thing that he did with Kevin Smith was the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. But with that being said, Dustin, thank you.
He was in Clerks 3, technically.
And Clerks 3 as well, unfortunately. Oh, man. Clerks 3 just did not look even remotely watchable.
It was.
Yeah, I don't understand the thought process behind why Kevin Smith still makes those movies. But, Dustin, thank you for once again joining me to do another Talkin' TV Actor Hall of Fame. I'm having fun with this series with you as well. And like I said, I'm thinking of potentially like starting some hints on Twitter as far as like what our next month will be for June. So
who are you thinking?
Who were you? Well, I sent you a couple of options. June, like I said, May was kind of like a last minute thing because we were like struggling to figure out who had a movie coming out in May that was really worth it, because May is like kind of mostly just big blockbusters. But June, we had a couple of options. We had a couple of movies that were surrounded that actually like would give us some interesting options. I thought, we got another giant star-filled vehicle with Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, which stars Steve Carell and Tom Hanks. We also have No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence. I feel like she's got enough to do a Hall of Fame as well. As far as everything else that was coming out in June, I'm like, yeah. So I feel like it's between those three for me personally. Or
Scarlett.
Or Scarlett. We have her as well. But yeah, so I figured as far as that goes, I was
probably going to be Steve Carell.
Yeah, I'm with you for Steve Carell. But this brings up another stipulation, because Steve Carell will be the first actor that we've done for a Hall of Fame that actually warrants this choice, which is, how do we do TV performances still count the same as just like regular performances, right?
No, we do film performances.
So it's only so no Michael Scott in the Steve Carell Hall of Fame.
No, but we can. I mean, that goes without saying. But like, we'll mention enough Michael. I'll mention Michael Scott enough on that.
But I'm glad that you bring this up, because this is established. This is setting the rule. This is setting the precedent. Because like I said, we haven't had the situation yet with Affleck or Joaquin. But so with Carell. Like I said, if they have like if we were to do like Gandolfini, no Sopranos, or Cranston, no Breaking Bad, none of those.
Because everyone would know the number one then if we included like the television performances.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay. So we are officially establishing that rule. There will be no peak TV performances included in Actors Hall of Fame. These will be exclusively restricted to movies, which is interesting. Yeah. All right. I'm glad that we're setting that rule now. That's going to make it more interesting for sure, to say the least,
Yes.
So with that being said, that is it, people. That is our latest installment of our Hall of Fame episode. Like I said, this episode will be available to stream on Monday as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on all of the social medias. Dustin, where can the good people follow you on the social medias?
They can follow me on Letterboxd, on Twitter, and on YouTube, Mr. G Movie Reviews.
All right. And of course, be sure to follow myself at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. Be sure to follow the official Talkin' TV podcast across all platforms. We'll be back next week for the second installment for our summer series with Fast X, aka Fast and Furious 10. See you guys next time. 12 scenes in a short film. Watch more fucking movies on the Talkin TV podcast.